if anybody would like to pose a question or make a comment about either what I said or anything else, you're welcome to. Just be aware that if we have like 20 minutes for this or something like that, to not start with when your mother and father first met, but to actually cut to the chase, get to the point, and then we'll be able to respond and hear from as many people as possible. So, do you want? Where's? No, you go choose. You choose. If you see any hands, just go find them.
Hey, John, I just wanted to say hello. I had the pleasure of working with you and Saki last year in Rhinebeck, and I remember when you spoke a lot about the 500-year view and the 1,000-year view when you were there, and
Yeah.
And I just wanted to hear you comment on that in the light of the need for action. You know, you were mentioning also tonight that, you know, it's there isn't time to waste. So could you reflect on that?
It's a paradox. I thank you for asking that question. I do say, and I've written about in some sense that you can't push the river, and I have a very long view of social change in a way. Like just to get medicine to change in the United States alone, it's like turning the Titanic, you know? I mean, even turning it a couple of degrees, it turns out it's non-trivial. Max Planck was famous for saying, and this is about quantum mechanics. By the way, the Max Planck telescope just discovered the belly button of the universe for any of you who are watching just last week. Max Planck is famous for having said about quantum mechanics, where all you need to do is be smart enough to understand the mathematics, that physics progresses funeral by funeral. In other words, it takes some time, you know, for people to get out of their fixed ideas. Often people are going to go to their graves with their fixed ideas. Mindfulness is a liberative practice. It is spoken of in the Buddhist tradition as the heart of liberation. Liberation from what? The ways in which we oppress and occlude and saddle ourselves with ideas and opinions that aren't true. And one of the most important ones is how we use the personal pronouns. So when we get caught in I, me, and mine in a certain way, we can't see beyond that. So if I, you know, have a particular view, and then some clever, imaginative person comes up with another view, I can't hear it. And Max Planck is saying, yeah, those people got to die off before the new society changes. That's a kind of cynical view. My own feeling is that, and that's why I started off saying that we're all in this together. This is a community. It's not like, you know, anybody's the point person. The whole point of this is that it's a distributive function, this awareness. And yes, it is incredibly urgent. So we have to, on the one hand, understand the urgency, and this is just my personal view, and on the other hand, we have to know that there is a certain kind of inertia in Downing Street, in the Parliament, if you'll excuse my saying that, in the Congress, in the White House. I mean, the people have their own ideas and opinions, and it takes a long time to move the bell curve. The fact that we may not have a long time to actually come to wisdom, you know, that's a problem for humanity. But if we start to all do our own little bit as best we can, then I think that we can work outside of time in a certain way and transform things in a way that's right now and at the same time wise enough to not push the river. If we push the river, we become messianic very quickly. We can get very dualistic, and then we can fall into us and them, only this time we're the right ones and we're the righteous ones, and that is a prescription for disaster. So I think if we're really talking about happiness, that's why I said we really also need to talk about sorrow, and we need to understand them so that we don't turn happiness into some kind of cliche. Well-being feels, you know, like really, really important. What does it mean to actually be well? And it's not something that can happen in an isolated, you've got, John Donne is one of yours, you know, no man, no woman, no being is an island entire unto itself. Well, that's kind of core English understanding. We need to operationalize it, you know, what the downstream consequences of that, economically, socially, politically, and enact in that direction. And people are doing it at a level that they weren't doing it before. So I'm very optimistic about that, but But it partly depends on, like, that's one person's opinion. I think all of us have to ask that question and then understand what we can do that's not going to burn us out or betray what's deepest in what we care about most, but at the same time work collectively for social change and political change. Number 2 microphone. Oh, nobody's got it? How about up there? Okay.
Hi. I have a related question about the risks ahead for the mindfulness movement.
Yeah.
As the word becomes more and more widespread,
Yeah.
and it can come to be appropriated or systematized, techniquified, commodified. What are the risks you see for this word and the impact for the movement, and what can we do to sort of aim off for that?
Well, the risks are huge to commodify it. As soon as something, the psychology of everything, it's kind of, I don't remember who said this first, but at first, any kind of innovative anything is considered to be the other side of the lunatic fringe. Then when it comes more into the mainstream, it becomes like, maybe worth doing. And then shortly after that, it becomes like, it's commonsensical, I've always been doing it. So people hear about mindfulness, they have no idea what it is, and they start talking about it. No practice, no grounding in practice, no understanding of Dharma whatsoever, no understanding of the roots of these kinds of practices and the kind of ethical foundation for them or anything like that. So that happens with everything. Anything that gets to a certain level of popularity is at risk for being commodified and then denatured or worse. And I think the only way to guard against that is for us to practice and to live our own experience of it, not as some kind of catechism. We're not talking about some kind of catechism here or revealed truth. We're talking about our own authentic experience as one single human being, but many, many human beings practicing in this way. We're creating a new way of being in relationship. And I think it's going to actually not only change the brain and the body in some sense, it's going to change, in some sense, we're going to grow into what it means to be human. I said yesterday on the stage that we gave ourselves the name Homo sapiens sapiens as our species name. From the Latin sapere, which means to taste or to know. So we're the species that knows and knows that it knows, which means the species of awareness and meta-awareness, or awareness of awareness. But I don't think we're there yet. We need to cultivate that more. And so we need to move into that, and there's some urgency about it. So thanks for asking the question. But I think we all need to ask that question moment by moment by moment. That doesn't mean that it's not wonderful, the enthusiasm for mindfulness, and we need to sort of, in some sense, invite people in and let them understand that this is a growing movement, but it's a movement of wisdom and compassion, and not a wisdom of just dime store, cliched, oh, mindfulness. Mindfulness, you mean to be a little bit more present in my life. To be a little bit more present, a little bit more judgmental, less judgmental. Why didn't I think of that? Of course. Well, you're not going to make it out the back door of this hall before, I'll just do that. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to make it. You have to practice. There's no two ways about it. How you practice, there are an infinite number of ways to practice, but you have to practice with a certain kind of authenticity, with a lightness of touch, but at the same time, tremendous resolve and discipline. I don't see any way around that. Thank you. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I'm a maths teacher working in Hackney, one of the most deprived boroughs in the country, and I'm not sure if you're aware, one of the scenes of the London riots in 2011, and
I missed that.
it was one of the boroughs that was affected by the riots of 2011.
Oh, the riots.
Yeah, so it's a very, very deprived borough, and I'm absolutely convinced that one of the ways to get the kids in the most deprived boroughs of the country to change their way of thinking about the world is through mindfulness and the work that Action for Happiness is doing. And I was wondering if you had the opportunity to perhaps pass on a message to them and say, if you had a chance to say something to them to prevent something like this happening again, what would you say? What message would you pass to them? And
Wow.
So, apart from just don't riot again, is there...
Yeah. It's very hard for me to do that because it would be an abstraction. I don't know them. I have never been there. I would hesitate to do that because whatever I would say would be really not based on intimacy. And I think what's going on in those communities in particular, but in all communities, but especially alienated youth, is that there's no intimacy with the rest of the world. I mean, the rest of the world is turned away from them. What I would recommend to you is to connect up with a website for the Mind-Body Awareness Project in Oakland, California, where these wonderful young people have developed a language for connecting with what we call at-risk youth and incarcerated youth, and connecting with them around mindfulness at a very deep level. But you have to speak the people's language, the native culture, so to speak, and live it. And sometimes that means tattoos all over your body and, pierces and all of that kind of stuff. But that's just the superficial part. The real part is it's always the same. It's always about trust and about being real. Thank you. Is that
Yes,
enough?
that's it. And I'm a Hackney boy as well, so I think I could speak the language and not...
There you go. Well, I'm not saying you got to go to California to learn that language. You speak it yourself. Very good. But you might get a lot of support, and you should connect up with them anyway, because this is a global kind of potential movement. So connect up with those guys, I mean, it could really be interesting, if nothing else. Then you could have a conference in this space, invite them, and, invite your guys and, girls, and see what happens. Okay, where's the balcony? Where do we have a microphone? 3? Is there a microphone up there? Okay, then we'll go there. Speak.
Mindfulness is used in the field of mental health.
Wave your hand so I can see where you are. Oh, okay, you can speak.
There's been a lot of useful discussion about how mindfulness is used in the field of mental health.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you can point me in the direction of any resources or studies there's been of using mindfulness to support people with congenital learning disabilities, and I ask for professional reasons.
What was the last part of that?
For supporting people with congenital learning
Yes.
disabilities.
Did
Are
you
there
say
any
so-
resources that you're aware
Oh.
of, or studies or applications?
It's not coming to me right now. I mean, there's a huge... Hold on a second. Come up here or...
I won't remember exactly, but if you look up Singh, S-I-N-G-H, I think he's worked both with people with learning disabilities in institutions, but also with parents.
You're talking about
and
Nearby
carers.
Singh?
Yeah.
Okay, so Nearby Singh would be a person that you can Google, but there's a huge field of that kind of thing. How much mindfulness has integrated itself into it at this point, I don't know. I think that in terms of the autism spectrum and Asperger's and so forth, that is a subject of some pretty high-class research going on at the moment, not so much oriented towards the children themselves, but towards the parents of children with those kinds of issues. So I'm not sure whether that was whether that's included in what you were thinking about or not. But
It certainly was, but certainly what our friend over there has pointed me in directions sounds like it's going to be useful to look into.
Nearby Singh is actually the editor-in-chief of a scientific journal by the name of Mindfulness, and he's done a number of studies. They are very small-end studies, so I don't know how robust this field is, but the people I know who are doing the research now on these interventions for parents who are, it's like unbelievably stressful to, for the family to have a child like that. And the potential for transformation is enormous, enormous. So this is not like, a potentially problematic situation. It's a situation of tremendous potential. Okay. Anybody up there have a microphone or want a microphone? Or? Okay, you go while we're trying to get you a microphone. I think we may try to get you a microphone. Yeah.
Sitting in the Friends Meeting House, it's it strikes me that Quaker meeting is in some ways quite a powerful expression of mindfulness, to kind of sitting in silence. I was wondering, do you think that the growing field of mindfulness could learn something from the Christian tradition? Do you think that's an area where there could be greater learning or integration of different traditions?
Yeah, I think that's going on all the time. There are people who are particularly, interested in those kinds of intercultural, tradition dialogues. And so there's an awful lot of that going on, And I think, anybody who says, well, we can't learn from another tradition is like, well, that you're shut off to the possibility of learning, which doesn't sound like too healthy an idea. And of course the Quakers have been at the forefront of very principled, nonviolent action for a very long time, and have played a very positive role in American society, in American history from the very beginning. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm interested in anything or any information that you have on working with people with dementia and Alzheimer's, who of course have really short-term memories, and the work is really around triggering sort of memories. So I just wondered if there's any information that you have on mindfulness and people with Alzheimer's.
Most of the work that happens along those lines is in the caregivers for people with Alzheimer's who are under huge stress, and the families of people with Alzheimer's. I really want to be clear that mindfulness is not the answer to all life's problems. So we do not know at the moment what the mechanisms are that are destroying memory in the brain. Although it is certainly the laying down of filaments that clog up the works and so forth. So some things are known, but I don't know of any systematic way in which people have tried to work with people with, say, early stage Alzheimer's or dementia and tried to sort of slow down the memory loss process or something like that. It is a growing problem in our society, as probably all of you know, a growing problem. I will say that we know that short-term memory is enhanced by 8 weeks of MBSR training, and that the hippocampus, that what I was mentioning in terms of the London taxi cab drivers, that it gets thicker, more gray matter density with 8 weeks of MBSR training, and at the same time the amygdala, which is the threat reactivity center of the limbic system, gets thinner. So, there are changes in the brain that are going on, but this field is in its infancy, so I can't say any more than that. Thank you. Okay. You're Australian, you don't need a microphone. That's the view from down under, for sure. Okay.
I guess thinking about, obviously...
Does she need a microphone? Yes. See? So much for being Australian. But here, come over here and use this microphone. Is this a non-microphone? Oh, we're going to give you a microphone.
Thank you, sorry. Australians also are really bad queue jumpers, so fulfilling all the cultural
stereotypes. That's okay, we can accommodate you.
I guess partly it's been answered by all the kind of conversation that's come before, but I guess I'm thinking about the growing application of mindfulness in individual work. Like lots of people, I work in the NHS setting, and they have mindfulness practices, they want to include it in their clinical work, but they don't have the support or the wherewithal or the whatever to run it in a group format. And people are weaving it into their individual work, and I just wondered what your thoughts were about. I mean, it's a lot to do with, dislocating it even further in some ways.
No, I don't know. I mean, any way you can integrate it into your work is fabulous. I mean, would you rather have a physician or a psychiatrist or a therapist be present or not present? This is a pop quiz. Okay, so it's a no-brainer that the more it is brought into individual work, the better. But it's also important that since the need is so great, that we develop programs that can meet the sort of large numbers of people who need this kind of training, so to speak, both on the professional side to be able to work with other people and on the side of the people who are most in need of it within the NHS. Thank you. So point me towards, yes, okay.
John, there's been a lot of debate about the quality of care provided in English hospitals.
Yes, I've been reading
and
the
care
newspapers.
centers. And my question to you is, can compassion be taught?
The answer is yes. We view compassion as a skill, just the way mindfulness is a skill. It's another, that's why using the muscle analogy, compassion is something that can be taught. But there are different kinds of compassion. There's kind of like what you might call superficial compassion and deep compassion. Deep compassion, you don't need to teach because we all have it. It's woven into our DNA. But sometimes it's occluded, that we need to sort of get out of our own way in order to even be in touch with how much we care about other people. Mindfulness actually cultivates compassion and kindness. So training in mindfulness and heartfulness, if you will, or mindfulness, heartfulness, actually taps the deep compassion. And at the same time, of course, you can teach people to be more present and more open-hearted and so forth. But you know, the best way to teach it is to give that to them. In other words, to be open-hearted and compassionate yourself, then it's kind of contagious. And you also have to create the organizational culture that actually rewards that kind of behavior and requires it and honors it and so forth. So that means that you have to actually transform the culture and remember, I mean, the Hippocratic Oath, I hope the NHS adheres to the Hippocratic Oath, at least in principle, but it's first do no harm. And how do you know if you're doing harm or not unless you're mindful? You won't be aware of whether you're even doing harm or not. So as we cultivate these deep capacities, these deep interior resources that we already have, we can train staff very, very adequately in these kinds of things if we create a culture where that's important. If we would create a culture where nobody seems to care and nobody's minding the store, then people will go into some default mode that is the lowest common denominator that often is, you know, seriously inhuman. Thank you. Yes, this will be the last one. So who's getting the last word? Number 3 on the balcony. Okay.
John, thank you for your talking and the lovely work you've done over the years. I'm often asked, what is a simple and brief page or two that one can give to somebody who's ignorant of meditation and mindfulness and yet willing to learn, that will tell them the basics and encourage them more? Can you think of anything that's brief, such as that?
How brief does it have to be?
Well, people's attention span, if they're not used to meditating, is quite short. So I would say 3 or 4 A4 pages would be about the maximum.
3 or 4 or 8 pages. No, nothing comes to mind.
Same for me.
Did I hear you say something?
You find one.
Oh, play ping pong with them. Yeah, he was asking about reading, so I was actually stuck with. I understand that, but you know, the point is well taken that maybe reading isn't what it's really about. Maybe it is you transmitting your own understanding to the people you're working with. That said, there are books like Mark Williams' book, Mindfulness in a Frantic World. It is not 8 pages. I wrote a book called Mindfulness for Beginners. It's quite short, but it's not 8 pages. And then, depending on the age group, Wherever You Go, There You Are is very popular among 20-somethings. It's very simple reading, but again, it's not 8 pages. Perfectly true that books by themselves can't be of, that they have limited value, but they also have profound value in resonating with the hearts of people if they are ready to enter into it. So it's we need every conceivable avenue for getting into this, every conceivable doorway. And the important thing is not to stand in the doorway, as the great yogi Bob Dylan said, and don't block up the hall either, but to actually enter the room, and the room of our own heart, the room of our own life, the room of our own practice, and then to live life as if it really mattered. If we live life, each one of us, our own way, as if it really mattered, but in tune with each other, I think we've already changed the world, and then the downstream consequences of that through continuing to practice are going to be beautiful to behold. So I want to thank you for your attention this evening and wish you all the best with your formal and informal meditation practice. Let me just say that although we did a little bit of formal meditation practice here tonight, the real meditation practice is how you live your life from moment to moment. It's not whether you're sitting or doing a body scan or standing on your head. It's how you are in relationship to everything that arises moment by moment, but with huge self-compassion, so you're not saddling yourself with some other huge burden of idealism and ideology that you'll never be able to actually fulfill. So I also want to thank Action for Happiness and Mark Williamson and Richard Layard for the extraordinary work that they do and for the community. And I also want to thank you for your presence here tonight, for your love, because I'm guessing that ultimately what got you here and what's kept you here is love in one way or another. And I just wish you well as the rest of your life continues to unfold and as the rest of our lives continue to unfold together. Thank you. And good night.
Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, before you leave, I'm sure like me you'd agree that something very special happened here this evening, and it's such a privilege to have Jon here. He's flying back to another continent again tomorrow morning, so it's been such a special evening having you all here and him here as well. Two very quick things. Firstly, please join me in thanking our team of volunteers who helped make tonight possible. And finally, we do these events fairly regularly. Our next event in London is with the wonderful Karen Armstrong on the theme of compassion. Karen set up the Charter for Compassion. That's on the 18th of April in London, so do find out more if you'd like to join that. But please, once again, join me in thanking Jon for being here with us this evening.